Welcome to another JAWS Mental Health Awareness for JAWS Coffee Chat by Jennifer A. Whitaker, which is a part of the World of Ability Podcast Network. Special thanks to Marcus Hart of Transform, Jay's Drawing of the Disability Channel, Zach Clayton of the Pack Channel, and Lawrence Wingate of the Wingate Studios for allowing us to have this on their platform. So I am going to pass over to Jen to get us started today.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you, Emily. Today on awareness, I want to talk about some concerns that many of us don't know. Many of us who have disabilities think there's no way in the world that we can work. But something I've come to realize in talking to a financial advisor that you will find on our next show, the Jaws Christ Talk, later this afternoon, that being today, March 20th, 2023. It's right now 2:30 Central Time, and at, I believe it's 4 o'clock Central, we will be having Bill Walters on here, on the Jaws Christ Talk. He was the way that I found that people who are on disability that worry about not being able to work at all can actually open up a trust and have some family member be the manager of the trust that will then collect whatever funds that the person with disabilities can earn from working to then be able to have funds for living expenses while not being punished for trying to work. There's different that surround this. So you would need to talk to, if you are a loved one, have a disability, whether you are actually on disability income or you work a full-time job, but just maybe have to find some way to save up money for your medical expenses or some other cost of living, that there are apparently laws that financial advisors know that allow us to have some means through someone else's management of our money to generate income that can help us have a better livelihood and more funds to pay our medical expenses, have money to spend, and so forth. That's even beyond the basic necessities, with the only laws being that we cannot use those funds for shelter or food. And in that case, our disability and Social Security income is really all we have when it comes to those two expenses. However, these trust funds don't have to be necessarily funded by the person who's disabled in their work. It can also be a percentage of your disability or SSI check that goes into it for use later on in life. It can also be where a loved one saves up money they earn for the benefit of a beneficiary, which is the disabled one, to use later in life. There's many ways to go around this, depending upon what's the exact situation. There are limits on what we can do with these, even though they're great for those of us who like to work, who don't want to be punished because we're trying to work. Personally, I found it hard to talk to a financial advisor because I thought, usually they want you to invest money and to use it for different things that tend to be the non-necessities. And in my own finding, that even as somebody who cannot make a gainful living, I'm able to find a means to add money to that pot. And at least in my case, by the time I pass, I'll have some kind of funds for my sisters to use to support me without being punished for a little bit of work I do. And this is something that a lot of us, when we hear about financial advisors and saving for retirements and so forth, a lot of us who are in poverty and have impoverished incomes think, oh, that kind of advisor is not for me. I'm not even talking to them because I don't have the money to put into that. However, for those of us who have mental health issues, many of us who are listening right now, often we end up being the ones that need it the most. We need that savings because at some point in life, whether it's when our parents die and we're grieving, or it's when we get a new diagnosis and we get depressed or in flight mode. Those times are when we really can't work at all for those of us who normally can very little. And yet we have more expenses. In that case would be medical health expenses. So we have a bigger need in those seasons. But too many of us believe that there's no way to save up for those seasons. Explicit for disability and supplemental security income or social security income because of how we get punished for working. But I never realized or even had the nerve to talk to a financial advisor, especially with the fact that I have my degrees in accounting. I kind of thought, oh, I know all about finance. But Bill Walters actually surprised me, so I definitely say he's a great guy to talk to and a great way to find out what are your options without crossing the lines on any of the laws that surround whatever's your financial or living situation. If you stay tuned after this show, when it ends around 3:50, when it ends around 3:20 Central Time, then you will, a few minutes later, find Bill Walters on our show. And for those of you who are on Clubhouse, you'll be able to actually ask him questions that pertain to someone you know or your personal situation, or maybe for educational purposes that may have to do with your profession you work in. But that will be an opportunity to find out more information beyond just what I know that is a little bit more personalized to my personal situation. Though I have to give Bill Walters the credit for having the nerve to speak up to me and convince me that, I thought I knew this all from studying in accounting, that obviously I didn't know as much as him. But he's a great guy with a great delivery of approaching with comedy, and that's how that got through to me. Emily, are you on the other show right now? So I'm assuming that Emily is on her other show right now. So based on that, let's get moving on to the next topic. Some of you I have told about a documentary movie or a TV series I'm starting to work with Wingate TV on making. This is one where we want many of you who would be interested in taking part in this action to email us at jawscoffeechat@gmail.com. That's jwscoffeechat.com. Coffeechat, jawscoffeechat@gmail.com. To email us there at our Gmail. If you want to participate in a documentary that we're making that is for the good of many of us, all of us potentially mental health issues, anxiety, depression, anxiety, social anxiety disorder, and others that portray themselves as such with like Asperger's and so forth. That all of us or maybe even in your case, it may be somebody that you love and not you personally. We're all impacted by this law that makes it where health insurance is not available to people who work on, like plumbers, electricians, tutorers, and many other professionals that may have to go to college or vocational school or some other professional training to have this job that makes better than minimum wage, but they have no means of working that job and getting health insurance because those jobs are all contract. Therefore, they're not employed, so they don't have the rights to group benefits like health insurance, dental insurance, vision insurance, so forth. And that said, I have heard from myself when I was just simply going shopping around my local neighborhood for a gym to join. When I found out that my insurer me to have multiple gym memberships and not just one. And at this one location that I thought was a small business, but turns out to be a chain, the lady at the front, that I don't know if she was an admin or what, but she's the front desk, and she was talking to me about memberships and they work with insurance and so forth. Somehow from there, we got talking about this documentary that I'm working with Wingate TV on making about people who have the pre-existing conditions. They're the people in the most need of insurance, but are also the ones that generally cannot get it because of the fact they have a pre-existing condition. She fell down in tears. She bawled and I asked her, I said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "We lost my dad 6 months ago because he had heart problems and because of his pre-existing condition, and he was a contract worker. He could not get on disability because he could work his contract job. His job was at no company, no matter where he worked, they never provided health care. So he was able to get his cholesterol medicine to control his cholesterol before it eventually took his life. He wasn't even around but 6 months after being told that he had high cholesterol, and that took his life because it led to heart problems and eventually a heart attack that he could not afford to treat. So she's one of many people that are now in consideration process of being a part of our documentary movie for the purpose of getting this heard and hopefully having some kind of political action take place with the partnership of the NAMI, National Association of Mental Illnesses. As I'm working with one of the state level NAMI affiliates or representatives in different states, including my own state of Texas, as well as some that are at the national level. And we're just trying to find more people who support this cause and to get together, team up, and whether you want to be on the movie or you just want to be one people holding the sign on the street in DC or whatever. We're looking for different people because this affects so many of us, especially the community of those with mental illnesses, without expanding to consider those with different heart conditions or those with, like this girl I met and her dad, or without considering those of us that have neurological conditions like my epilepsy and autism/Asperger's. There's so many of us that are impacted. And even if you're not the one with these diagnoses, if your loved one is, you know it hurts you, it breaks your heart, your life's impacted too. So whether this somebody is already gone, they're struggling, or maybe they're doing well, but out of the care for others who may be struggling as a result of this lack of a law to provide us with exactly what we need for those of us who actually need it and don't just want it. We ask that you will get together with us and be part of this movement so that we can all work together as a community to bring hope, health care, and treatment with opportunities to overcome various conditions to the general public with mental health problems, as well as other healthcare problems that are the ones with pre-existing conditions, and also are really the ones that need the insurance more than anybody else, yet are the ones who often, more often than not, are the ones who cannot get it. And there was something that some of you could debate on and say, well, but it was made available. Well, there is some truth in the Affordable Care Act related to that, because the Affordable Care Act did make it where, in my personal case, my parents could claim me as their disabled dependent, which is why I'm self insurance. And that's how I'm able to get the help I need to be able to sit here on this podcast talking to you right now, or to be working with the NAMI and doing other things I do. That's not to say I'm disabled. I'm not disabled. That's not to say that I can work full time. I'm still very minimal and only able to work a few hours a week. But I would not be working those few hours a week if I did not have the health care, as just one condition alone of mine personally is life threatening, because my epilepsy alone need to stop breathing every time I have a seizure. So in my case, it did not allow me to go back to work. It allowed me to be able to do very minimal work of a few hours per week versus to not even have a life. And that's how detrimental this movement is. Even though there was, like I said, some accomplishment with the Affordable Care Act, because my parents, at least in my case, were able to keep me on their insurance, which is how I get what I need. For those of you who maybe have deceased parents, you may be able to presently, through a brother or sister or somebody else who claims you as their dependent, to get on their medical plan and hopefully dental and vision plan as well. But then there's the majority of us that, as we get to be adults, different things happen to our loved ones, especially for those of us who are only children. And once the parents are gone, don't have family, especially if they're not married, or their spouse is also an only child. And when parents are gone, we practically don't have a family, so stuff like this is not available. And that's why this movement applies to the majority, whether you're able to work or not. But if you have a pre-existing condition and you need health insurance, then whether it's the type of work you do, like the plumber and electrician that are only contract jobs, or it's that you're on disability and you can't even work at all, that those are the ones who are in the most dire need of help, but generally do not have a means or way to get it. And you are the ones I want to represent, and ask that you will email us at jawscoffeechat@gmail if you want to be part of this movement, whether it's holding a sign in Washington, D.C., or it's being on our documentary with Wingate TV, where we're going to make these problems known and push for the movement through it. Either way, we ask you to email us, jawscoffeechat@gmail.com. Kurt, do you have anything to add?
Well, absolutely. It's a pleasure to see our legislators and doing the demonstration signs and that kind of stuff. Now you're talking language. Yeah, we need more of that in the U.S.
Well, this really is. I brought this up. My best friend brought this up because she knows the different high up people over NAMI, and she got me to meet with one that's at national level. And this lady asked me to speak as a public speaker on NAMI. When I mentioned this, remember a few weeks ago, and you had me for the first time meet with Lawrence Wingate. Well, after I had told him that I had an idea of a movie, and when I met with him the second time, that was maybe 2 weeks after that first time, but you weren't there. He said, "What's this movie idea you had?" So I told him about how we were doing this movement, and he was the one that had the idea to make it into a TV series where we'll do different episodes that keep people up to with the different statuses of the movement, with our first so many being trying to rally different people up to participate, because the more people who can help us push this movement, and the more that his TV production can, through these different episodes of a series, keep people aware of the problem and the progress as we hope, and then to terminate the series when we have the outcome that we intend. So it's kind of like a progress report kind of series, but we have to start with a call to action by rallying people up and making it known, and then to invite more people to get involved. So see, I had the idea that I give credit to my best friend for bringing to my attention, and me to meet with the PAC officials of the National Association of Mental Illnesses to get to be told that that's a great idea and we actually need it, to now have their support. And then Lawrence's idea of making it into a documentary, and we're just putting all these heads together, and we're at work for the good of our country. And this would be at work of something that would support the Disability Channel in terms of helping people who are disabled, right? Or like with the Ability Channel, right? Because help those who have these special abilities to have a way to put it to work, put it to use. Well, one way this would do that is by giving them the health.
Yeah, I mean, really, when we work these things through, like when we're talking about mental health awareness, let's add in advocacy, and to be appreciative of the work that, let's say, activists like yourself, if I can call you an activist.
Yeah.
So the idea is that if we think about what you're going through to send a message on this social, societal issue, and for legislative attention, and to work on the system, really what we're massaging is the culture, the customs, the genetic memory. There are things that are in place today that is carryover, and in its own way, it showed itself forever in the past, but we're evolving. And so that's what you're helping have happen, is to evolve. But my point here is that we're talking about a population of its specific demographic being stakeholders of this mental health issue. And you mentioned the work at the Disability Channel. So the Disability Channel not only works towards access to the TV industry for the disability community, which in the auspices of that, even though most of the mental health community is not really, balled up into the faction thing, but it's its own special thing. But like with governors' committees for people with disabilities, mental health is at the table, because there are those constituents that they serve that have a mental health issue, and then they have a duality that they have mental health concern or attribute, it's part of who they are. They really concentrate on their mental health, and then they also are arranging things because of a disability, and a mental health diagnosis and experience can be debilitating, can be an extra challenge, and can add to that extra awkwardness, for another person. And it's not a limitation of the person with mental health or disability. It's a limitation of people outside the community that
Right, like what I was saying there. Like where I was saying that for those of us who may not have mental health problems or conditions, we probably know and have an impact by else, because of my statement that the person with mental health problems or conditions is not the only one that suffers, but those on the outside that are the loved ones or the community, or who else that gets a broken heart because of somebody's depressed or whatever other like impact, right? A lot of people with depression think they're the only one that's in misery, but how many of the people that love them are also in misery because they don't like that loved one's in that misery, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's a little bit of an art form to, look at, like, as we're talking about this, like I put in my little, buzz statement, fun and functional. That's a little bit of where my passion is, to find out, how we're doing logistically and access to all things fun per the definition of an individual. Because being a program provider, I can go out there and I can be all about what I'm providing, but it may not be that goodness of fit for an individual. So then all of a sudden, we're back to square one. That as great as it is, it's not going to be taken on from the individual because it doesn't really grab their interest. And so really, I want to see where we can build dreams under the terms of the individual and get back to what's, over the centuries has been so great about our country, the idea of the American dream. And people talk about our Constitution, that it's about the pursuit of happiness. So the idea is, it's like even our founding fathers had a little legalese in there to say, well, you may not ever achieve happiness, but boy, we want you to go for it. To have that
Yeah, pursue it and chase it. You catch it or not.
So, and then there's this nuance, especially in the mental health aspect, that actually a fun thing might be a little displaced at the moment. It's kind of like if you're having suicide ideation, are you going to go ahead and go play a round of golf or something? It's probably not going to happen at the moment, but yeah, we want to keep going.
Depends how well disciplined we are and how long we've been working with our healthcare providers, as well as how dedicated. Because what I have found is that listening to Christian music, since that's my phase, it cheers me up. I found that's very therapeutic when I'm depressed because it cheers me up and I'm in the hole, in the dumps, as you'd say. And then other times I found that there are books I like to read. And even if I've read them 100 times, they still cheer me up. So there's still something I do if I get depressed. So there's some things like that may irritate some of our family members because we're always playing the same music or reading the same book or whatever, something. But if that's what it takes, that's then again something that like with depression, increases our mood, motivates us, uplifts us, and that's not necessarily the golf and you're running away from it, versus you learn that golf is your drive, golf is your interest. So I need to go play golf when I'm in the mood, but I feel like it's hopeless. Let's go play golf because then I'll get distracted and focus on golf instead of whatever is the thought. But for me, that's books and music. Other people, it could be golf or something else.
Yeah, and for me, that's the key. Is I'm aiming as a community organizer to get this dialogue and conversation, and to check in on, can we maybe heighten our capability and capacity to be in a state of readiness for a myriad of things that might be useful to an individual at any given moment, because you never know when an individual might be in the mood or be in the situation or going through a thing of the day or grieving process or suicide ideation, that like we have events where we do a great thing, and for the lion's share of people, that's just kind of how you have to do it. But there's a little bit of continuing the evolution so that it can be a little bit more on a Minuteman type thing, to say, like, through our communication tools within family, within support network, whatever, if there's an awareness that something could do a person a whole lot of good, I'm seeking to create deployments where somebody could go ahead and respond to that, and to see how quickly we can do it. And I've done that a little bit in my water skiing pursuits. For 10 years, I've been very serious about expanding the access to the water scheme so that people with disabilities can have access to it. When I think of the mental health community, water skiing can be one of these therapeutic recreations. We can talk about 50, 60 others real easily just as a conversation start.
But definitely that would be one as an example, yeah, in one way.
Yeah. So the idea is like even people have different sleeping patterns. You and I were talking the other day last week, Jennifer, about time of the day. The hour on the clock can be different. I maybe want to be addressing something at this hour, and it may be tough to get that engagement. But then we find, well, for the other person, let's wait 5 or 6 hours, right? So there could be all that stuff. So if something is better for a person at a different time, what does community do? See, and that's what I kept in my mind. I'm kind of like, okay, we're doing these programs 11 a.m. and thinking that for just helping as many people as possible, that's seeming to be a really good fit, large consideration. But for an individual, they maybe would prefer to do water skiing like in the hour or two before sunset for whatever the reasons. Maybe they don't like the hot sun, so they don't want to do it 11 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Well, but see, that also goes to another thing, which is when can they do it? Because that evening one may be because they work an 8 to 5 job and they know they need it, but is if they can't then at 11 to 4 because they're at their whatever 8 to 5 job. So see, then you can have other factors that's not just what's best for each person, but even for, which sounds like it for ones that are more need that as a coping skill, then those that don't necessarily need it as a coping skill because they can work a full-time job, it's also like, well, okay, they may be outliers, they don't need it, so they're not your market, but they still could benefit, but theirs would have to be at a different time, and that's part of the in business, as we say, target market and going with where that market, the borders, where the lines draw of your market versus all these that are other people who could benefit or could be great customers but aren't your market.
Exactly. And so my is going to wrap around idea for each and every individual, because we were on a meeting here today where a pastor was talking about what he's finding is that say somebody who's a teen thing has a need to see a psychiatrist or psychologist, and then they just feel really they feel like they're a letdown because they're like the exception to the rule. Like who goes, like you're really problematic if you go to see a psychiatrist or a psychologist. But then
that is a stereotype. But that is a true stereotype. Like personally, when I met somebody new at this coffee shop where I hang out down the road from my house, the one girl that was the first time I ever meet her, is a friend of mine. She said, "So do you work full time?" She says, "I hear you talking about all this kind of work." And I said, "No, I'm disabled." I said, "By the time I see my therapist and psychiatrist and all these other people," I said, I can't even one entire day, so I'd be fired from any job." And she says, "Jen, that's okay. It's okay if you need help." She says, "Everybody needs somebody and something." She says, "Don't be ashamed of that." I said, "Oh, I know. I just feel like I'm less than other people because I can't work a full-time job like so many people that I know. And other people push, they think I should be trying and that I could. But, and there's always that but, right?" And she hit a point that nobody's ever noticed in me because she was somehow able to hit the seed in who I am. That's where, even though I have all these talents that about Kurt, and so does Emily, and the rest of probably a lot of listeners too. You know, my books and all these things I write and all these things I do. But then the seed is, I feel like I'm still not enough. No matter how much I achieve, no matter how much I'm able to do, how many gifts and talents I have, however much money I make off these gifts and talents, I'm never enough because I can't have my own place to live. I can't be fully independent financially. I can't, and I can't, and I can't, and I can't. Right? Nobody before her was able to uncover that part of me. That's shame. That's in spite of all that I accomplished, and people on our podcast have heard, and people on Compassionate Citizens have heard in the year or two that I was co-hosting before I had my own. But you know, the different people who've known me over the years from different perspectives, none of them have actually got to the point to realize that I see myself below everybody else because why? I have a mental illness and I cannot work full time, and I also have neurological illnesses that she hit. She actually nailed on her first time ever meeting me.
And so what I report to the world is in the last decade, what I feel anticipating in with individuals like yourself and a lot of our other friends around us is that, like, say, neurological difference. So to me, for me, I feel, you know, you are an opportunity for strength for me in everything I participate in. Because if we can use your tools and, you know, your coping mechanisms, your methodology, you have your diet show, what you do there, you know, Christ talk, the role of faith in your life. You know, when you start to unpack what you do because of who you are, and you're responding to who you are, and you're doing what you need to do, and in how that you become an expert in things that I'm not in those, because what you put your attention to grows, right? So you're putting your attention to these issues of schedule, these issues of stimulation, maybe rest, maybe, you know, your eating pattern, you know, whatever it all is. You're putting your attention to it and you're making it work. You're building a balance in your life that how you get there looks very distinctive as compared to me. And the distinction you have is powerful, you know, and then that's where my worldview has gone to in the last decade. Not because I could figure it out on my own, or some of these people like with Helpopedia we talked about today. Everybody can see that at helpopedia.org.
Right.
All these great things that are out there, like the false, you know, about a decade ago I came up with the term falsely named mainstream. So the world of there's a whole world of people that I announced as like 6 billion people of the 8 billion people, you know, making a falsely claimed mainstream world because we just have this history that is not holistic. It's not, you know, socially just. You know, I was at a International Day of Happiness or a Happy Day presentation today, and there were some comments about the world is not where these professionals, you know, would like to see the world to be. Like thinking of our 8 billion people on the earth and this global view that there's a tension, there's a healing process that some could argue a lot of these statements come from awareness, that it may have been there in generations past, but we may not have been aware.
But I'm one that would argue that because think about this how many people already had illness before now it's a big thing. Now there's all these crises. They weren't arguing the pandemic is just brought it out to attention.
So getting through all of these things where we as a person feel attention and we adapt and react and we know kind of what we're going to do this, to me there's power in that. There was energy and there's potential energy. And when we figured out like this is kind of where things are stabilizing and plateauing in our body, the homeostasis, the balance your body gets to, how we achieve that again is powerful. It's insightful. It's what we should be putting out there in education for everyone. So really I have a worldview that the world only works for just for a political sake. I kind of make it like 75% of people, and I kind of use a lofty number like that to say that's how we hide it, because we get distracted by the 3 out of 4 people works for it. So when you talk to the decision makers or the bureaucrats or people who are founders or whatever programs, it's like they report the good news good. That's great representation to me of 3 out of 4 people. But then what about the other 1 out of 4 people that maybe we can make a pretty significant shift to make it more what these other folks have in mind? But that's not by and large how our world works, or even in localized settings or small numbers. People kind of look at how our 30 people or 300 people are doing or whatever, and they kind of get satisfied as a leader, that person who's the contact or representative, kind of saying, we're looking pretty good, and maybe we'll say some things because a little bit aware of some of the participants or recipients of services or, in membership. Like I'm part of a water ski club. We have 80 members. I'm very cognizant of how, with our summer season and how it propels
Mhm.
through. I know that there's a lot to be elated for, and as a group, that there's nothing to do but to celebrate it. But I also know that if I talk to certain sets of friends, they have ideas about how, as great as that was, this is how it could have been a little better for us at our house. You but that gets missed quite a bit. And I think maybe is happening. So folks like yourself being empowered to say, Jen, we want to know more about your journey, because your journey is going to help our journey, to help politics to kind of bring out to where the narrative should. Like if we think of our last presidential election, how much in the last presidential election did people talk about Americans with disabilities, or like this realm of mental health? Now it did come up.
You mean in the last one being Biden's or Trump?
Anywhere along the line. During the Trump time, it basically
was because Trump was all for the pandemic, so difference in how much that impacted voting, the mental health and all that. In the 2019 election, that was for the 2020. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So what I'm saying is
versus in the 2022, where we elected Biden, that there was, because the pandemic had already hit, there was more mental health and it related or impact in decision making, which actually then I guess it's technically, was it 2018 when we elected Trump, but right? The last one before and the first one after pandemic, there was a difference in mental health's impact on our choice of candidates.
Yeah, so the idea is that Trump was elected in 2016, and then, his term took us into the pandemic. So a lot of people criticized his response to the pandemic. And then in November of the first year of the pandemic, Biden was brought into office. And then in January 2021, sworn into office, January 2000.
Those are the years, yes. But you see what I mean? So look at the election of Trump didn't have as much influence in decision making of who he chose in mental health versus the Biden, because before pandemic.
Yeah, and I did observe that mental health was in there, but it took quite a bit of following a whole lot of politics, a very much secondary issue, but the advocates did do
right. Versus now it's a mainstream.
Yeah, it's mainstream, but I still call for that with these issues, that we need some political appetite from folks at home and our Americans and anywhere in the world to take whatever our political system is in the world, and to really find those ways that those that are the powers that be or seem to have political clout or whatever to really really hold their hand through. An example is that area, my political involvement, I connect with
Right.
and I talked to her over the phone, and I saw her at a luncheon and so forth, and I really piqued her interest, and I got with her like 5 or 6 times around to tell her about the opportunity. And what I told her is, I said, if you that you're going out there to voters and you're going out there to families and homes and you're putting a message out there, and what to be aware of is that 1 in 4 people with a disability. So just think, and she's a candidate that kind of gets it, so it's like, you're so right. But the tension is how does she do it? Even though her heart was in the right spot, as a candidate, she really had to tease it through, and she needed my help to figure out how does this fit into her message. And the idea is that, whether you want to talk about taxes or you talk about properties, home ownership, you talk about our healthcare system, whatever topic you're on, pay attention to how significant every topic is to people with disabilities. The idea is politically, it gets spliced up so much in like a dozen topics, and we're not bringing the voters with disabilities and their family members with disabilities into it, so we completely miss it. So like, let's say the mental health topic, like say anything you want to do on medical review. Yeah, and we're running at that time too. Yeah, for next time. Yeah.
Would you like to make any comment before we move?
We do have, with Helpopedia, we have a special needs resource fair that's available virtually, 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. on Wednesday. So again, reach out to us through helpopedia.org. There is a listing on Eventbrite for Helpopedia Special Needs Resource Fair. Otherwise, folks can call me or text me 262-372-1754, or give me an email, Kurt, K-U-R-T, at projectiheart.org. There you go. That's my announcement. Thank you.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. If you'd like to join with myself and where other entrepreneurs, businesswomen, and so forth network, have coffee chats and so forth, please go to Aspire Women for Excellence. That's ASPIRE womenforexcellence.com. And that's where you'll find Lady Kendra, who is the female Bible study teacher and leader of. And if you would like to see our podcasts or other things we are involved with, please go Linktree, that's linktree.ee/Jaws Coffee Chat, AWS Coffee Chat. If you'd like to learn more about us here on Jaws Coffee Chat podcast, or what all we have to offer besides just podcasts, even to see all our different episodes, please go to jensbooksandmore.com. That's JENNS and more.com. And you'll find books that I, Jennifer A. Whitaker, write or co-write with clients who have the original ideas. And if you go on podcasts and so much more. Wherever you found us and you are watching or listening, please be sure to subscribe, like, or follow Jaws Coffee Chat. That's JAWS Coffee Chat, and that's the name of our plea. Thank you for joining us, and have a happy and productive week.